Okay, so today I'm going to do a little Q&A session, and this really isn't questions that I have received about the Bible study in general, but it's an opportunity for me to kind of dig a little deeper into some of the topics that I really didn't go into during the Bible study. And so I want to talk a little bit about oblation. Now, oblation is i- it's basically an offering. And when at the beginning of our Bible study, we looked at Daniel was in prayer, and the angel Gabriel came and gave him this prophecy about the 70 weeks. You know, that 493 or 490-year period, at which time we established there was a 7-year period out somewhere out in the future that had not happened yet. And so I referred to it as the tribulation prophecy because that's really the prophecy that defines that. But it's a prophecy that was designed for the Lord to deal with the sin of Israel. And so Daniel was actually at the time praying about Israel's sin. But this oblation, now, I don't want you to confuse this. There's a medical term today called oblation, which really is a medical procedure to deal with the abnormal rhythm of the heart. So this isn't an oblation, but the oblation, which is an offering. And so I want to look at Israel's offerings here real quick. Kind of go through what their major primary offerings were. So you had a burnt offering, and I'm just going to read the highlighted yellow here. If you want to pause and read it all, that's fine. But the burnt offering is the oldest and most common sacrifice. It represented a submission to God's will. It was completely burned on the outer altar. No part of it was eaten by anyone. And of course, it was made of cattle, sheep, goats, birds, depending on the offerer's means, as the poor people cannot afford, the larger sacrifices. So if you were a poor family, you weren't going to go afford a bull to be sacrificed. And so that's kind of why they had the differentiating animals there. Peace offering is an offering expressing thanks or gratitude to God for his boundaries and mercies. A representative portion of the offering is burned on the altar. A portion is given to the Gehonim, which is it's a priest, but specifically it's a priest that's a direct descendant of Aaron and his sons. And so uh, you have priests that were of the tribe of Levi, but you also had priests that were specifically from Aaron's bloodline. And so that's what that was. And the rest is eaten by the offerer and his family. And this is common in Jewish culture. The head of a household really could offer a sacrifice or an offering for the entire household. And so that's what's going on here. So everyone gets a part of this offering. God gets his share, the priest gets his share, and the family gets their share. Then you have sin offerings. The sin offering is an offering to atone for and purge for sin. Of course, the size of the offering is varied according to the nature of the sin and the financial means of the sinner. Some of these offerings are individual, some are communal. So the sin offering has those different attributes to it. Then you have a guilt offering. This is for if you're not sure if you've committed a sin, you're feeling guilty about something, but you don't know what it is. And so you're offering to atone for something that you are not sure whether you've committed a sin or whether you have. Now, obviously, if you determine later on that you've committed a sin, then you'd have to go back and give the sin offering and move past the guilt offering. So then you have the food and drink offerings, which will be represented by a devotion of the fruits of man's work, because it is not a natural product, but something cultivated through man's effort. So a first fruits type offering could also be considered a heave offering. And so this would be like your harvest offerings. And when God has blessed you with bountiful abundance. And so you give a portion of that. Then you have drink offerings. Usually, drink offerings accompany various sacrifices and offerings and feasts, and they usually were of wine, the drink offerings. And so that's a little bit about that. So let's talk specifically about oblation for a minute. Oblation in Leviticus and Numbers, the King James occasionally uses the word oblation. Generally, it is referenced as an offering. The general term for it is offering up like prayers or incense or fire. In Ezekiel and Isaiah, oblation renders a term generally consistent with a heave offering, which we talked about that kind of a first fruits offering, uh, where it would correspond with a gift. of some sort. And here it'd be, fruit, bread, meat, wine. And so there's also another part to this because it was the evening oblation is when he was caught in this prayer, Daniel was. And so there was a time of a morning sacrifice established, which was called uh, the third hour, which was about 9 a.m., and then the time of the evening sacrifice, which was established the ninth hour, or about 3 p.m. And this is consistent all throughout their history. And so I'm going to look at these references here. Exodus, and which is they're out in the desert, the nation of Israel, and they are consecrating their tent of meeting. And then in Numbers is the ordaining of Joshua. And so Exodus here we see, thus shalt thou do unto Aaron and his sons. So they're kind of ordaining Aaron and his sons as priests here. I've commanded thee 7 days shalt thou consecrate them, and thou shalt offer every day a bullock for sin offering and for atonement. And thou shalt cleanse the altar and hast made an atonement for it, and thou shalt anoint it to sanctify it. 7 days shalt thou make an atonement for the altar and sanctify it, and that shall be an altar most holy. Whoever touches the altar shall it be holy. Now this is that which thou shalt offer upon the altar: 2 lambs, the first year, day by day, continually. And so one lamb would be offered in the morning, and the other lamb would be offered in the evening. So they're picking out 2 lambs here, and they're going to offer one in the morning at the 9 o'clock hour, and then one in the afternoon at the 3 o'clock hour, and they're going to do it for 7 days. And this kind of to sanctify the tent of meeting and to ordain Aaron and his sons as priests. And we see the same thing here now in Numbers. We're seeing Moses is getting ready to die. Joshua has been named as his replacement to lead them into the promised land. And so they are going to ordain, kind of consecrate Joshua in this position. And so we see here, command the children of Israel and say unto them, my offering and my bread for the sacrifices made by fire and a sweet savor unto me shall be observed to offer unto thee in the due season. And thou shalt say unto them, this is the offering made by fire, which ye shall offer unto the Lord: 2 lambs the first year without spot, day by day, for a continual burnt offering. One lamb shall be offered in the morning, the other in the evening. And so here we see again two lambs, one in the morning, one in the evening, and this is going to be done day by day. And so we see that consistency in this the morning sacrifice and the evening sacrifice. So the time of the evening sacrifice was also known as the evening meal offering, or the oblation, which was a solemn time set apart for devotion and prayer. And if you go back in the Old Testament, when God heard Elijah and did wonders, and now this is a time when Elijah was in Moab, and the Moabites were trying to get their god Baal to light this wood on fire, strike it from heaven and light it on fire. And Elijah was calling on his God to do the same thing. Of course, the Moabites' God didn't do it, and Elijah's God, the real God, did do it. And so, but it happened. This happened around the 9th hour, that evening sacrifice time is when that wood was struck on and lit on fire. Of course, Jesus, the sacrifice, was sacrificed about the 9th hour. Matthew, Mark, and Luke all mention Christ giving up his ghost at the 9th hour. And so it's the same time of that evening sacrifice that Christ gave himself to be our sacrifice. And this is the same time that Gabriel is sent to Daniel to tell him the time of the Messiah's death and the consequence of it. And so that's what we're getting at. Daniel here is in prayer. He's in his evening oblation, and the angel Gabriel appears before him. But so Daniel, when he's in Babylon, he's in a foreign land. They are captives. They don't have the temple. So when the temple stood, this hour was devoted to sacrifices. And at this point in time, because there's no temple, it's been appointed to a time of prayer. Now, Daniel, during his whole captivity to the very last, was with pious patriotism, never forgot God's temple worship, though speaks of its rights, long abolished. And we see Daniel use vocal prayer, pouring out his soul during the time of the evening oblation. And if you remember, there was another time in the book of Daniel when Nebuchadnezzar had built this idol to himself and wanted everybody to worship it and pray to it. Of course, Daniel would go in and throw open his windows and get down on the floor and pray to his God. And of course, they wanted to have him killed for it. Uh, so, I mean, we see this consistent theme throughout Daniel's life. He would pray in the morning and then pray in the evening. And basically, the time in between was a time of fasting. So he'd have his prayer in the morning and then fast till the evening prayer. And then after that evening prayer, he would have his dinner. And so it's kind of like a meal offering type prayer, oblation. Um, so that's what he was doing. At the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice, which though not now offered, the altar being destroyed, the Lord's people in a foreign land, yet the time was observed by them, and which was a time of prayer, being about the ninth hour of the day, or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, as the time of the morning sacrifice, another hour of prayer, at which time likely Daniel began and continued till now fasting. And so here we have him praying and fasting, and then praying again, and then eating his evening meal. In order to excite his attention, Gabriel had to touch him because he'd been on his knees in prayer. And so that's what you have here. So I want to go back and read this in Daniel. And if you go to the beginning of the chapter, he's praying for the sins of Israel. It says, we have sinned and committed iniquity and done wickedly. And so he's recognizing Israel has sinned. And so uh, we read here in Daniel 9, verse 20 and 21 says, while I was speaking and praying and confessing my sin and the sin of my people Israel, and presenting my supplication before the Lord my God and the holy mountain of my God, yea, while I was speaking in prayer, even the man Gabriel, whom I had seen in a vision at the beginning, being caused to fly swiftly, touched me about the time of the evening oblation. And so here Gabriel swoops in. He's praying for the sins of Israel. Gabriel swoops in about this time, and he's going to go into this verse 24. He starts talking about the 70 weeks that were determined on his people to do away with sin. And so that's where all of that comes from. And so I kind of hope that helps you as you look at what oblation is, what purpose it had in the Old Testament, what significance it has to the Lord's sacrifice on the cross, giving help his ghost at the ninth hour. So anyway, we'll leave it there. I have a few more of these to do today, and then we will call this last day's Bible study complete. All right, we'll see you soon. God bless you.